right, welcome back, listeners, to Agile Disrupted, a podcast for the people in the trenches of Agile, where voices are heard and stories are shared. Listeners, as hosts for the pilot season and season 1, MC and I would like to take a moment to celebrate with you all our season 1 finale episode. Woohoo! Woo-hoo! Yes! Yay. Okay, MC, you're not celebrating with us. Can we get like a what a little bit? What? Thanks, buddy. All right, so with that, today's season finale episode is going to be called Disruptors Assemble. And yes, that is a Avengers reference, Matt, so you can make your face accordingly. So
I rolled my eyes a little. I was like,
Has anyone been counting Tabby's like Marvel references this season?
You know, I mean, like, it might be like a separate tactic. Okay, you know what? We can turn it into a drinking game. It's fine. You guys love it.
All right, so yeah, we're gonna definitely start drinking when MC starts talking about pizza.
Okay, yes. All drinking games welcomed. So, yes, listeners, that's right. What that means is that we have brought back all the speakers from season 1 for one last showdown, which I like to call Change My Mind. And what that means, I'm going to be bringing back controversial topics that were brought up in season 1 as a crossover segment for other speakers to chime in. So as I'm bringing in these topics, I will pick a specific speaker to share whether they agree or disagree and why. Thus kickstarts the discussion for 10-minute rounds. But, I mean, are our speakers ready? Let's find out. Ready, player 1, Matt Miller. Are you ready? Matt Miller, you are
He's
unmuted.
not.
Let's try again.
okay, now that I'm unmuted, I'm ready to go. Let's do this. Is that more enthusiastic than hey?
Yes, much more enthusiastic. Ready, player 2, Caitlin Zarcone.
All right. Ready, let's do it.
Ready, player 3, John Augustine.
Unmuted and ready to go.
Ready, player 4, Manny.
I was born ready.
Oh, shit. All right, he was born ready. Ready, player 5, Josh Malden.
Hell yeah.
All right, let's do this. First topic from episode 2, definition of not done. Work is done when it's in production. Do you agree or disagree? John, and why?
Yes. If you're in the Agile space, you're probably building software. And if you're building software, then that's the name of the game. So software that isn't in production isn't usable. It might be valuable along the way, but it's not usable. So my position is only when it's in prod is it truly done.
I vehemently disagree.
Oh, shit. Let's hear it, MC.
I mean, if you're doing work for the sake of learning something, getting some value, right? In many cases, I think you can do some work, leave it in a lower environment, get some tests out of it, and be like, oh my God, our customers do not want this at all. Throw it away. You're done. So I think when you speak so macro, right? Maybe you need to be in prod, but I think micro, right, on an individual story or individual feature basis, I don't necessarily think you have to be in prod to be done.
Yeah, and I agree with what MC is putting out there. You know, a lot of what we do in the Agile space is not just deliver value, but assess value. And you can't really deliver it until you assess it. So at some point, there's going to be work that's throwaway that has been finished, tested, and the hypothesis has been either proven or disproven, which at that point, wherever stage in the game it's been disproven, then it's done. So it may not make it to production, which I'm sure the stakeholders who's paying for it would love to save money before you get it all the way to the production to be told that it's not valuable. Like, right? So I agree. I think it can actually be done before it hits production.
So the Agile Principle, I think it says something like working software is the primary measure of progress. So I
progress
agree.
Doesn't mean
I
done,
agree
though.
that information is valuable along the way. But when you think about that principle, what do you think about, I guess, your counter argument? Like, where does the information that kind of fall in context of that Agile Principle?
So the dev environment, I was going to say, does the dev environment after unit tests equal working software? Because I could argue that that's working.
Yeah, and does it have to be in the hands of the customer and working to be working software? I don't know. I even question whether or not it just doesn't keep going until the software is retired, because you're never really stop working on it as long as the product exists.
That's my vibe as well. Like, you're in a constant state of discovery and learning and talking to the humans who use what you build. And yeah, it's like it's done when you're fired or you quit.
Damn. Okay.
Otherwise, as long as it's out there, it ain't done.
But I could talk to humans without having a software team. I mean, I could talk about software and throw out ideas and, draw some ideas on napkins and stuff like that without having a team to actually build code. So I can kind of prove out the ideas without doing the whole software thing.
So, but what does exactly production mean, though? I mean,
buddy.
I mean, you could actually have like a UAT environment or a dev environment where it's in the hands of users, but only a select amount of users. Is that considered production? What is production when we're talking about that? And you could have working software, like what Manny was saying, in other environments. So really, we're talking about working software. We're not really talking about production. We're talking about getting that value, getting that feedback. And when we're getting that feedback, that cyclical iteration of, working, getting feedback from the customer, can we really say anything that they're working on is done or done, I guess, what I usually like to say.
Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a plot twist. So between dev and prod, what's the key difference? Data. So is something fully functional in dev and then it blows up in prod, not usable, but how do you really know? How do you know it's going to respond between both, like any sandbox versus it's in prod?
So I think it's data, and I think it's desired adoption, right? So the data helps us drive decisions, but is our end user or customer, is it desirable for them to even use to adopt? So when I think about that, I think that's the difference. Like, we play with these other environments so the data can tell us something with that select group so that we can make decisions until it's at a desirable point for that software to then be adopted by the target customer.
And Tabby, when you say the data is different, are you talking about just the data in the database, the stuff that's being passed in, or are you talking about the setup of the environment? What exactly do you mean by that? Because I think that if you move through an effective development cycle, moving it into a test environment so the next development doesn't break anything that you've already done, then moving it into a staging environment or whatever you want to call it, to where you would refresh that with production data, and that environment should match production. So if you dump code in there, it should be the same. And I keep using the word should. a lot, because that just gets missed like all the time. But if you were following best practices, that's where I'm getting stuck at, like the difference between dev and the other environments. Yeah, that's highly suspect. But once you start following standard processes, it should be somewhat similar, if not exactly the same, by the time it gets to the environment before production.
So this is where I'll concede my point a little bit. So I would say that maybe it doesn't have to be in prod, but it has to be shippable. So if the lower environment matches prod and we don't think there's going to be any hiccups along the way trying to get to prod, I think that's a qualifier. If we can create a shippable product and the users can touch it and interact with it and provide feedback that way, that to me means it passes the usability checkbox as well. So it doesn't, I think if you can kind of pass those two hurdles, then maybe it doesn't have to be in prod for you to get the feedback. But for me, like, a qualifier for good feedback is something that actual users can touch. It's more than just kind of looking at it, theorizing about it, talking about it. It's more like, hey, I interacted with it. This is how it feels. It's that experiential feedback that I think kind of puts a bow on what done is.
Right. And at the end of every sprint, is the work that you're doing potentially shippable, or is it released? And at what point do, like, the audience that it's intended for actually use and respond to it? Because if they actually do respond to it, like when it's shippable but not actually released to prod, are we serving the same purpose of releasing work into prod for them to use it in the same manner? Are they behaving the same way, the users?
They can't benefit from it. I guess that maybe that's the final hurdle. I mean, so we can, you can get the feedback and everything can look great. Everybody can be super excited about that enhancement or product. But, until like you can actually have that Spotify enhancement on your phone and download, your favorite podcast, it's all kind of, you're just in that mode of waiting.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
So you're not using it per se.
So slightly off topic, but when we're talking, we spoke about the different environments though. I'm not a developer, but I play one on TV.
Cool.
Why aren't all our lower environments just like production? I don't understand. Like you're literally creating chaos by having your environments not all be as close to production as possible.
Well, I mean,
let me answer that.
Oh boy.
Go ahead, Manny.
So when you work for organizations that are highly regulated, it is actually against the law to have PII, personal identified information, in environments that can be manipulated.
I mean,
So
that's just data. You can do seed data and fake data.
I get it, but unfortunately, when you're in a regulated industry, there are safeguards around that data. Like, that data is important, and we see that now in like the lawsuits and the cases about how like Facebook is using data and how Apple is trying to block them from being able to track your data. Like, data is a gold mine that has been exploited. When you're in those lower environments and a developer wants to take, like, let's take a financial industry, for example, and you're wanting to do a specific use case, and you actually pull somebody's data, this real life person meets your criteria for your persona, you pull their data down, then you manipulate it, but then you forget, change it back, and somehow that manipulation goes through and get pushed to production. It overwrites production, and now whatever you had there, if you put $1 million there, maybe that person was a negative balance. Now they see $1 million in there. So that, and I know that's an extreme example, but there was actually a case where that happened a few years ago, where a girl logged into her banking, had millions of dollars, hurry up, extracted it and spent it, and actually went to jail for extortion. Even though it was a banking error, it was an error, she knew she didn't really have those funds. So, like, the protection is not just against the consumer, but, like, as you can see, that hurt the organization. You don't really want to have the same data that's in production in your lower environments as we're fumbling through and manipulating that data, either prove or disprove hypothesis.
Why do I still want to volunteer as a tribute, though?
Yeah. I mean,
Sorry,
sometimes
Caitlin.
Volunteering as tribute goes left field. All
Sorry,
right,
Caitlin, go
disruptors. We do got to pause. Like, we got to get to the next topic. But Caitlin, you hold on to what you were going to say for that topic. Bring it back later. Cool?
Okay, if I don't forget about it.
You're not going to forget. Put it in the chat, girl. Put it in the chat. All right. Disruptors. Second topic from episode 3, manager or mentor. Managers are not required for a successful Agile team. Do you agree or disagree, Matt? And why?
I have 2 different answers somehow.
Oh boy.
Yeah, the first one is I agree that for a Agile team to be successful, they don't need a manager because they should be self-managing. Mm-hmm. That does not mean for an organization to be successful, they don't need some form of leadership, because then it's the inmates running the asylum. And it doesn't mean that managers in general, if they are not doing the like straight up micromanaging, command and control, like this is my kingdom, fiefdom building, then I'd say there is a place for it, because most of the teams don't want to do a lot of the crap that the manager does. So why would we throw that on them if, like, most developers, they want to code. That's what they want to do. They don't want to go sit in meetings. They don't want to interview thousands of people over the course of a year to find like 2 people that's going to work on the team. So while the success of the Agile team, I think it is tied to managers, but for a team to be successful, I think that can be separate. Like, you can have a successful Agile team and not have any manager involvement, but I think from a holistic system perspective, you need some form of direction and leadership.
So I would agree to that.
Matt, would you say that a good manager can enable an Agile team or a person on an Agile team?
A good manager should support the Agile team and enable and build a culture to where they can be successful and just work as hard as possible to make their jobs easier so that they can deliver, because they're the ones doing the work.
So they're a variable then. So it's a positive variable. I guess we could argue that in the absence of having that positive variable, maybe the people on the team are limited.
That's why it's weird. If you consider the Agile team in a vacuum, no, you don't need a manager. But once you throw them in a holistic system where all these moving parts have to work together, if everybody's doing different things, everybody's just going to be going in different directions. So you have to look at it from a systems view too.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense.
So can I give you an example, a sports analogy?
Oh boy, sports ball? Okay, I guess I'll suffer through this.
So I think, just to piggyback on what Matt was saying, this has been recently tested. The Warriors, Steve Kerr, the coach, teams got they got all that talent. They felt like they didn't need the coach. So he sat back and let them coach themselves. And they lost. They lost a series of games. But then when he came back and started coaching, they won. Why is that? They had all the talent.
Oh my God.
Because I think a key word that you said was manage. I'd like all organizations to kill that word. People like once you have agile teams that are self-managing, they're managing the muck. You hit the nail on the head. We need leaders. So if managers were no longer called managers but called leaders and visionaries, that support part, that function part you're speaking of, that would actually rewrite their job description where they're not micromanaging and or managing, they become those support leaders.
I feel like if you call leaders visionaries, their head's going to get too big to even walk through the front door
God,
of the
yeah.
office.
Oh my God. That ego's going to blow up. My God.
But in theory, though, in a perfect world, that would be the right terminology.
And that's why I was kind of I'm split with how to answer that question, is because in a perfect world, this is how it should work. We do not live in a perfect world.
Nah.
And there are very few organizations that are set for that. Well, the question was, are managers required for an agile team to be successful? If I consider it in a vacuum of an agile team, no. But if I consider the whole system of the organization, some form of leadership, I'm very hesitant to say, yes, we need managers, for exactly why Manny said.
I think that it really depends on the kind of person in management, because I, in general, feel like most people in management have no business being in management.
Amen.
Amen, buddy.
But it's like, if you're that kind of leader where you're going to be like enabling and like being in the trenches with your people rather than being like, hello, my subjects. Yes. Yeah. It's like, you can go sit down over there. We don't need any more of that. Please and thank you.
Here's what I believe, Josh. The type of manager that you just described is the type of person that likes to put pineapple on pizzas.
Pineapple.
We should just
I knew this was where it was going. I knew it.
I love Hawaiian.
Oh, yes. That's very true.
On a very real topic, though, the one thing I'm glad I've heard nobody say is we're not empowering people, right? So, like, if you're empowering someone, then they're not really empowered to do something because you're giving them permission. You're giving them the ability. I really love the direction, Josh, you took that, and Matt, with the enabling, because I think that's what a real leader does. They're enabling someone to grow, enabling someone to be successful.
But on that note, though, I would like to say that to the question that managers are required, I guess by the book, it's not. But I would like to say, it really helped the team, kind of like what you said, Matt. Like, it helps the team move forward by them being the support, if that is what they're doing, of course. Like, as we all know, a lot of managers aren't doing that. But if that's what they're doing, they're being that support, saying, okay, you need people, tell me what you need. I got you. You don't have to worry about it. You worry about what you want to do, which is the coding, the development, the so on and so forth. But let me take care of the stuff that I know you don't want to take care of. Like, I would like to say that is required if that kind of person did what we think that they should do.
For that to happen, though, you would need to, and this is what everyone recommends, you need to flip that hierarchy pyramid. Instead of having everybody at the bottom that's doing the work supporting the people above it, because that's bad managers are looking to their people to support what they want to do, not supporting their people to deliver the best product for the customer.
Right.
So every level above that should be supporting the level below that if you were going to have like a good leadership hierarchy. But if you're going to have a manager hierarchy, that CEO wants the other executives to support him or her, and then as it goes down,
I will
shit
say,
flows
though,
downriver. So
like a good agile team, like a successful agile team is as good as they are in the ecosystem they live in. Let's just be real here. Like, you could have you could have the best developer. Hell, you can have Josh on that team and just like bring liveliness every day in and day out from a UX perspective. And you could have like the best scrum master too, but like, are they really going to be successful if they're in a shitty safe environment, or like if they're in a shitty ecosystem, whether it's safe or scrum at scale or less, it doesn't even matter. If the ecosystem is really, really poor that is set up by management, I mean, they can only go so far, right?
So that's why I think managers are necessary, because like MC used the word grow, right? So if I'm a developer on an Agile team, like, who am I going to talk to about growing my career as a software developer? Is that a conversation I have with my Scrum Master, or is that maybe my manager and we'll say, today I'm a Java developer, tomorrow I want to move into like back end or iOS or whatever. Like, who's that person that I speak with to help me advance my career? So that's where I think the manager can help.
What about other developers? If I was a developer and I wanted to figure out a way to advance my career, I'd look for people that did exactly what I wanted to do. And most of the managers I've worked for or worked around, we did not line up when it comes to where we wanted to go.
Ooh,
especially skill
they're kind of
sets.
getting in the way almost.
Yeah.
I think that's where you
Kinda.
go into mentors, you know.
So that was what I was getting ready to transition to, Caitlin. So I guess maybe I'm the only one here with direct reports on this.
Yeah, you are.
On this panel. So I almost feel like I shouldn't be, since Josh said I need to get kicked to the curb. But no, seriously, my approach, and this is why I said like they should be leaders and visionaries, and going back to the second or the third podcast, I think I was actually on that one talking about the mentorship part of it. So I look at why I'm needed is to offer a different and a fresh perspective, not to manage my people. And I tell them this all the time, like, I'm just the guy that has to do your HR. Like, I manage the HR crap. Tell me how you're doing. You might have a need for me to help support you through your team because you can't go talk to the Scrum Master because you might be having a conflict with that Scrum Master. Or you might be having a conflict with other developers on the team. Or maybe you're having conflict with the whole team. And I can sit back and I have no stake in it, offer a different perspective and say like, well, have you tried this? Hey, I'm hearing a lot of situations. Sounds like you're the common denominator. Right? Like I can have those kind of conversations without putting the team at risk as an outside person that doesn't have any stake in the game. But I'm here for the best interest of you because I manage you. So I think the whole mentoring part and not micromanaging can be very beneficial if you have the right manager with the right skills, with the right motivation, and not just looking to you like, what was that impersonation? Like, ha ha ha, little minions, I'm here to take over the world. Yeah, like, so long as like that's not the mentality, then it's not necessarily that managers aren't needed.
Well, I'm going to take this opportunity to clarify
Yes,
that
go
I was
for it.
not saying we should kick him to the curb. It was just that most people have the wrong motivations for being in management. I have folks who report to me as well, and like my whole vibe is like, please let me get out of your way. How can I do that?
Yeah, I think you guys get the gist of it. I think it's really either there's a skill misalignment for the manager, and so we should empathize for the manager because maybe they got thrown into that role and maybe they're not equipped for it. Maybe they don't have the right skills. Maybe they came from frontline management but really had great ideas and they brought them into product and they're just not equipped, so they know how to manage frontline employees but they don't know how to maybe lead leaders or lead, smart people and have the smart people tell them what to do or what should be done.
So it's a training issue.
Potentially it could be in some instances, a mindset issue in other instances, or just a bad fit. Like we've all been on teams where we just had people that were just a bad fit for the role.
Yeah, I mean, not all teams can handle the tabby pizzazz. It might be tabby annoyance to them, so who knows? So with that, let's transition to our next topic, third topic. From episode 4, trust, SMH. Trust is like a vase. It'll never look the same when you put it back together. Do you agree or disagree, Manny? And why?
I agree 90% of the time.
Okay, let's hear about that 10%.
So for me, when I think about it, it's about the choice, but it depends on how it depends on how the vase or the vase was broken. Like, right, if it was just like, if it wasn't shattered, it could potentially be saved, which most of the time it's going to be shattered. But that 10% of the time where it's not, that one or two pieces can be put back together. And with the right craftsmanship, right, it could look very close to the original state. And what I mean by shattered is trust, and it kind of goes back to something we talked about, Tabby. Transparency at its core equals trust. And a lot of people lump that in with transparency with communication, which is completely different. Communication at its core is to bring awareness. So depending on what's happening in that dynamic, if your trust is broken, that means you're not being transparent, which also could too be a byproduct that you're not communicating well, or intentionally not communicating well, or being transparent. So depending on what that situation is, it could be completely shattered and it won't look the same again. Or if it was just a miscommunication and you're transparent with them and you bring that trust and you reel it back in, you can move forward and reestablish that trust again, that transparency, and build on that and actually become stronger alliances moving forward. But again, that is a 10%er.
Yeah, I mean, that also comes to if you are communicating, you're being open once that trust is broken. I mean, when you're saying that the vase is coming back together, yeah, it can get very similar, but it's never going to be 100%. There is always going to be that slight off. And I hate to be the pessimist here, but there's always going to be that one on the back of the head. Yeah, like we're going forward, but in the back of the head, that one time that they did this, I'm going to keep moving forward. But when it happens again, it's going to shatter so much more quickly than it did before.
I'm glad you brought that up, Caitlin, because that's kind of where my head is at. And that's just because even though in like the situation Manny described, it could have been a complete, mistake and you talked through it and it's water under the bridge. However, the human mind of self-preservation, whenever they notice anything, any itch that's like, ooh, that felt like last time, it's going to bring it right back. So, but I want to throw it to Josh, because Josh, I know you've done a lot of things regarding conflict resolution, and I know trust is like at the center of that. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I have been thinking about trust as like this binary, like you have it or you don't kind of thing. And something that I've just learned over the years is that it's like, it's really more on a spectrum and like it's dependent on the kind of thing. So it's like saying someone broke your trust, like that puts so much work on that person and also like just the relationship in general. And so it's like, maybe you trust their motivations, but not their abilities, or maybe it's vice versa. And I guess MC, one of the reasons why you're throwing it to me is like, I help people work through those situations and those conversations. And it's like, that's one of the key things. It's like, you don't look at it in such a binary way.
Right. And I'm glad you brought that up, Josh, because in the episode where we talked about trust, I brought up the BRAVING acronym that Brene Brown talks about. BRAVING, again, standing for boundaries, reliability, accountability, vault, integrity, non-judgment, and generosity. All of those elements are really, really big in establishing trust. And sometimes some people can have a couple of those elements, but not all of them. But I mean, should they be reprimanded at the time of the relationship? Maybe the relationship is new. Maybe the relationship is new and you don't have all those elements yet and you just give it time. Or they messed up and they didn't follow through on a promise and now they can't be reliable, but they're trying. Like they're trying to gain back that reliability, but they got all the other elements. They weren't judgmental. They met the vault policy. So working through trust, I think, is a different kind of mindset because trust goes both ways, right? It's not just one way. It's applied both ways. And having that generosity kind of gives you that opportunity to build back the vase in a sense. But I mean, I agree with you all too. Like the vase isn't going to look the same, but do we recognize that and do we still accept that?
Yeah, I think another good analogy, here I am with those, is like, I think you brought up a key point about like the work and the investment. Like it also too depends on whether the relationship is new and or the history of it. Like, right, like think about going to the gym and you want to transform your body. It takes you 6 months, but then it only takes you 2 weeks to be out of shape. Right?
I love that.
So it's like the same exact thing. Like you could be in the trenches with this person for a year, and then all of a sudden they really drop the ball. They really dropped the ball. Do you discredit that year where they was in the trenches with you? Like, does that just go out the window? Like, you know what I mean? So I think I like how Josh was talking about like that binary, like it depends on what it is. And I think there are some instances depending on how it's broken, you're 100% correct. Like you can't get it back because it's shattered. But that's why I said that 10% because of that year we spent. You're going to give me the benefit of the doubt because it wasn't to the magnitude where it was just like, okay, like no matter what you got going on in your life, for sure you should not have done that. So that 10% is like you give them that credit for that year and allow them to bounce back. But you're still going to protect yourself, like to MC's point, where in the back of your mind, there's still a portion of that where you're like, it's not 100%, but you might could get to 92%. And that 92% is that's just what it is. You got to accept that.
I like that variable of time though. So whenever you spend a lot of time with someone, you will try to say, if the vase is broken, you say, okay, well, I'm willing to try to bring it back together. Where if you spend a week or however long, because it depends on each person. A year may not be long enough. It may be 5 years or 10 years or however, or it doesn't matter the length. So, I mean, but I like that time variable because that's such a strong variable enjoyable, because that's how long you understand and you get to know each other. You create that relationship with each other, saying, okay, I know you as a person. I know this was a mistake and it wasn't against me. I'm hurt. I will work with you to build my trust again.
Yeah. And isn't it, I guess, compelling that trust is kind of built in moments and not in these long grand gestures. Trust is built in really, really intimate moments, but so is betrayal. And I guess that's where it kind of gets scary. Like you could give someone your trust easily, but you could gain betrayal quite as quickly as well. And like, how do we respond to that? Like, I trusted someone for 7-10 years, and within an instant, betrayal just happens in a moment, and that vase is now shattered. Like, you worked so hard. Like, for me as a person, like when I work really hard on something, whether it's a relationship or a passion project, when that betrayal happens, you have to take a moment to reflect on, what is my next step? Like, what do I do as a person?
Well, I think that's the difference between intent and motivation. I think when you really think about it, is like, what was the intent, and then what was the motivation behind why it was broken? And when those two don't mesh out well, that's where the 90% comes in. But like, someone could have the greatest of intent, maybe they're just not motivated to do it, or maybe the intent was there and they just didn't know how to deliver what they were trying to do. That's that 10%. And then that's where like that forgiveness could come, because they wasn't trying to be malicious. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. All right, we are at time, people. Moving on to the next topic. So, from episode 6, minimum viable potential. Products fall apart without understanding their product market fit and the 5 types of MVPs. Do you agree or disagree, Josh?
I definitely think that's a huge factor in something falling apart. Ultimately, it really all comes down to like, are you listening to the people who are using what you build? And if you're not, you're basically wasting someone's money or just doing something to serve their ego. So it totally makes sense. The 5 different kinds of MVPs, like the really good ways of looking at whether this thing is going to be like a success or failure. But I like that you framed it as minimum viable potential. I remember reading something not too long ago about like sometimes MVP becomes like this test of like, do you like burnt pizza? So it's like, yes, you can technically make a pizza, but like it's burnt and it sucks and no one wants to eat it, but like the machine works.
Yeah, exactly. Is it burnt pizza or is it pineapple pizza, Josh?
It is never pineapple pizza.
I completely agree. Not on the pineapple front, but on the metaphor that you gave. How often do we create products that like do the same thing, and we're completely driven behind the vision behind it, but like it has to be competitive towards the other. It has to be unique, and understanding the need versus the wants are all important aspects. And that's where kind of like the 5 types kick in, because you could have a smoke test, but that's still an MVP. But why is it an MVP? Because of a hypothesis you're trying to experiment with. But John, you go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question for MC. So, like MC, I think you mentioned in one of the podcasts your opinion about a certain pizza manufacturer or maker, and I guess how they kind of provided pizza. So my question to you is, have you seen their new automobile, their new driverless car, and what's your first impressions?
Oh God.
And does that change your opinion of that pizza maker?
Oh, here we go.
No, it doesn't. I think it's more from the perspective of like, I don't think we're ever going to get to a place where we have fully autonomous vehicles, because I think the judgment will never exist in artificial intelligence. You have to make a judgment call at times. So that's my thought about that. I wanted to bring up a slightly different point though, Tabby.
Yes.
You were saying before about like, how you were sort of restating the thesis here of like products will fall apart without understanding their product market fit, and that they have to have some level of difference or uniqueness, I think is the word you used. I don't know if I agree with that. There are so many products in the world that, look at Manny's face, there's many products in the world that and a perfect example, right, the conversation that we had with Josh around the differences in the phones. They accomplish the exact same thing. I can call you, I can send you a message, I got a bunch of apps, but they're not necessarily unique. They just, some phones do things more efficiently. And I think for human beings who we care, time is money. If I can take the exact same product and I can come in and be more efficient than the previous one, do the exact same thing, I'm just a little bit more efficient. I don't think that is a unique product. It's just better. It's just more efficient. That's all.
All right, I'm going to challenge you, MC. Go ahead, Josh.
I was just going to say that, like, just to tie it all back together with a Parks and Rec quote. Time is money, money is power, power is pizza.
Pizza!
Also, like, 90% of my conversations with MC have something to do with Apple and Android, and I have no idea why.
You know, I was going to bring that shit up. Okay, let me tell you why. Okay, so in that episode where we were with you, Josh, we talked about the target customers for the iPhone versus the Android, and then MC brought it this Mandalorian reference. Okay, so MC is a target customer for Android. You think that wasn't on purpose? The target customers of Apple products, you think that wasn't on purpose? So a product market fit could very well tie into the target customer need. That is partially why they are potentially unique. Otherwise, everything would look the same, and there's a good chance that Apple may not be where it's at right now. Because for us Apple lovers, we have a loyalty to the brand and the functionality and the design.
See, but that's the software. Go down, go up a level to the hardware. What is the difference between an LG phone, a Samsung phone, a Google phone, a Nokia, a Motorola? They all run Android. The experience on the phone is 80 to 90% the same across all of those devices. But one fingerprint might be on the front versus on the back. One might have buttons for power versus you can do it through the settings. You know what I mean? It's they're the same thing. They're just different efficiencies.
No, it's
but
the design.
What about when the MVP has reached the market and it has an unintended use? And I'll give you an example.
Oh boy.
Being an Apple fanboy here.
Oh hell yeah, bring it.
When the Mac Mini first launched back in the day, Apple wanted that to be an intro computer that could capture the market at an affordable price, but it wasn't powerful enough. So then the end user, the customer, ended up using it as a media center. They pivoted, and now I'm on a Mac Mini now that I do video editing, I do audio recording, I do podcast editing, I do all kind of stuff. But the response from that, initially, it was used for something completely than what it was intended to do. From that particular example, I just wanted to show, like, sometimes you send a product to the market and the customer ends up using it for a completely different use. And either you can ride that wave, or you could pivot back and say, I don't want you to use it that way. We still want this to be the entry level thing. So we're going to put more hardware in it so that it can meet your needs. And that's what they've done over time. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there too, as a wrench.
I like it. Something else that I'm going to challenge you on, MC, and this is a direct quote from a previous episode. Haha, selective memory. So you talked about in an episode in the customer UX edition, where you talked about you only use a MacBook. You will never go back to a PC. Why is that, MC?
Because Windows doesn't know how to make good software.
Target customer need. Boom.
Shots fired.
Shots fired, buddy. So, but that is the Apple lover coming out. Okay, I'm very loyal, and I'm a biased Apple lover, listeners. Okay, so you already know this about me. But I agree with you, Josh. Like, I think like the 5 different flavors of MVP serve different purposes, but you carry that product market fit because you already know what makes your product unique. But you got to validate it. You can't just like go off of intuition. What do you think, Matt? You've been making all kinds of faces.
I keep going back to the whole Apple versus Android thing because let's be real. Apple stole every freaking thing that was unique to them. They just slapped a better design and better marketing on it. The end. Every time WWDC comes up, the shit that happens in September, I can't remember the name of, where Tim Cook stands up there and just shows off basically Android features with a new design, like the cameras that they've been like really just harping on. Those were from Android phones. There were phones that like they had the best cameras on the planet, and Apple was like, "Give me that." So, like the design is important, I guess, more so because you even said it, Tabby. You're like you like it because of the design. But like I have probably an equal amount of Apple stuff and Android and PC stuff in my house.
You
So,
are the hybrid.
I am.
No loyalty.
Damn right, no loyalty.
That's my line.
But one of their branding and one of what makes Apple is the fact that they're fast followers and their shit just works. Like at the end of the day, people just want, the average consumer just wants whatever it is that they're buying to just work. And so Apple doesn't care about being in the forefront of innovation. They just want to make sure whatever they put out just works. So sometimes there's a trade-off with, okay, we'll let Android go ahead and put it out there and mess it up. Then we'll come back and clean it up. And then we'll put out the shit that just works.
So hold on. So you're telling me that...
Hold on, everybody. If that's the Apple's approach, then maybe they should steal from Android how the fuck to log into an iPad. Because I swear to God,
Shots
if
fired.
it takes more than 45 minutes to log into a new iPad because they give you that stupid loop of asking you to enter your information, maybe they should steal that from Android too.
Listeners, this is deeply biased. I
don't want to call it stealing. I want to call it like
pirating.
No. Think about recording artists and their samples. Like the original is cool, but when they do that remix, though,
until you drop
the remix,
until you drop it and it breaks.
Oh shit! Yeah, that's true.
I mean,
then it's all gone.
I mean,
all right, shots fired. I'm going to mute.
You're gonna say that every major release of iOS just works?
No.
I can call out some. If it has a .0, it's a piece of shit.
No, I'm just saying holistically. Like holistically. You guys get where I'm going. I'm not talking about the, getting down to the nitty-gritty, but just overall, it just works as intended. It's easy to use and it just works. Like you could give it to a 2-year-old and they could figure it out very easily and navigate and get further than they would on an Android or a laptop or like a Windows machine.
I agree, especially when it comes to like one of the bane of my existences, and that's like natural scrolling. Mm-hmm. You give that to like an infant or a toddler, and if you don't have natural scroll on, watch what they do. They always push up, and like no one's built for that. Like, at least not for me. I guess I'm just too old and I'm used to the original way of scrolling, what I think is natural.
Uh-huh.
Anyways, I digress.
Yes, that's true. I love how this turned into a circus, Apple versus Android. Like, I knew this was going to happen. But I will say, though, there was this upgrade at some point. Then we'll wrap up to the next topic. There is a point where they made new features to the GPS, like maps. There is this Australian accent of a voice in GPS, and they fucking removed it. Chris Hemsworth was gone, and Chris Hemsworth was no longer navigating me to all my direction. I was very upset about that. And then they brought him back later.
And then she went home and watched a Marvel movie with Chris Hemsworth in.
Yes, I did.
Take a
Thor
shot.
Ragnarok for the win. All right, transitioning to the next topic. All right, from episode 5, the customer, with Jake. Between the end user, the customer, the buyer, and the customer is the most valuable player for a product. Do you agree or disagree, Caitlin, and why?
So, yes and no. I guess it depends on what you consider the customer as. Everyone has a different definition as customer. So like the buyer, I would say would also be the user, which I would also say is the customer. As far as like, the stakeholders or anything along those lines, that's different. If people are saying the customer is the one who funds it, which I would say would be a stakeholder or a sponsor, again, that's different. I don't think that I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think their opinion matters. Like, yeah, they're budgeting it, but they're not the ones that are buying it. They're not the ones that are giving that value. So whoever is using the product, the ones that are buying the product, using the product, and will continue to use the product should be the one giving you the feedback. That is what's most important in saying, okay, well, going back to MVP, they should be the ones giving that feedback saying, is this feasible? Is this potential to create a product? Is that something we want? So I know it's kind of philosophical, but I totally think that definitely the user, the buyer, and the customer, they're all one and the same. I think they're very important.
So I would throw like a counter argument here. So this might be for Matt, I think, the most. So here's the product: baby diapers.
Baby diapers? God.
Oh, the
so
user.
Who matters in
I
that
know where you're
decision?
going, and I like it.
Oh.
Okay.
Who's the customer? Who's the user? And who matters?
The customer, the baby is the user, and there's different things that will attract me that the baby will not give a shit about. so to speak.
Well, I think the whole joke is that it will give a shit.
Literally give a shit.
But for a caveat to that, though, the baby is the user. And if you give the diaper, the parent is the buyer. But give the diaper to the baby. And let's say the baby has an allergic reaction to the diaper.
Diaper rash?
Diaper rash, you know, or if it's not holding up, you know, and creates another diaper rash. You know, we're using this analogy. I'm going with it.
Yeah, I know. This is getting really grim.
So the user's feedback is crying and discomfort, which in turn is going to affect the parent, which is going to buy a different product because it's not working. So really, it's still the user.
I mean, yeah, if it's a shit product and gives your baby diaper rash, but I keep thinking back to we have two types of diapers in our house at all time. We have expensive diapers that she sleeps in because they hold more, and then we have the cheap ass Loves that you buy from the grocery store. And the reason that we don't put her to bed in the Loves is because they're not going to hold enough. She's going to pee throughout the night, and then she's going to wake our asses up, and we don't want to get up.
Well, then stop watering your kid.
Damn.
Right?
Baby's huge. She needs to hydrate.
And so, as a parent as well, those are just two types of user journeys. Dun,
Oh,
dun,
boy.
dun.
Dun, dun.
Like, so, you know, actually, with all three of my kids, they ended up having to have 3 different brands because of the different type of eczema their skin had. So again, it all depends on the end use. So every product has a customer segment in which finds what it is that they're buying important to them, like fills a gap or a need that maybe another one doesn't. So they're all relevant. If not, then they wouldn't be in the market. And I just used that since we was going with that example because, you know, eczema and, you know, what irritates different people's skin from a genetic standpoint, sometimes you can't plan for that. So no matter how great or how much you want to pivot, maybe your product only fulfills 60% of the market. There's room for other people to do their specialty thing.
Yeah, I feel like you guys hit on
diapers
brand
at Manny's
loyalty.
house? Is that what I'm hearing? Natural diapers only at Manny's house?
Organic cotton
no,
diapers.
No. We just had to find the right brand. That's all.
I was gonna say that. So brand loyalty, that's a big thing with target customers, right? Because you know that, I guess we're going with the diaper metaphor, that you know this diaper is gonna perform and not give a rash.
I'll switch up the metaphor for you, Tabby, if it makes you feel more comfortable. Because I'm pretty sure most
you.
everybody here, and I could be wrong, have worked for some sort of enterprise that is providing internal software or is buying software for their users to use. In that case, the people that are purchasing it, they're the customer. Because I have had people buy software that teams that I've worked with have created, and the managers love it, and the end users absolutely despise it. They don't give a shit. So then if they are the end user, but they hate it, but the customer is still buying it anyway because they love it for whatever reason, you don't think that they're separate there?
I definitely agree with that. So managers, right, they could buy software or they could force the organization to create internal software that the customers or the users don't have any say in, but they're the buyer. So whatever they say goes. And I guess the end users of a team are forced to go through this training that doesn't match what their current workflow is. And I'm talking about dark patterns here, right? Like I'm not talking about the healthy relationship that you have between your target customer and the product owner. I'm talking about where stakeholders want an upgrade in their current application, but they're not going into the intricacies of the customer mindset. They just want an upgrade. They want these features and they want to bring revenue.
But at the end of the day, that's going to burn them. They're going to find that sooner or later. I mean, if they're buying software and the end users don't like it, at one point they're going to hear it. And there's a reason why they don't like it. Whether it's not efficient or it's not doing what it needs to be doing or so on and so forth. If they don't care what they hear, it's going to end their pockets at one point. Maybe not right away.
Why are we still using Teams everywhere? Because
You know?
Teams almost everyone I've ever worked with hates Teams, but organizations keep buying it because typically it's packaged with all the other shit that that Microsoft makes that you do need.
So I will take that analogy, Matt, and bring it one step closer to all of us.
And not diapers.
Not diapers.
Thank you.
Scaled Agile framework.
Oh boy, you said the word that shall not be named.
the same situation, right? They aren't focused on the people running it. They're focused on selling it to the managers who believe they need this big thing that can help the organization scale and help bring organization. But at the end of the day, go ask any Scrum Master, Agilist, or Agile coach who has worked in a safe environment, there's no fucking difference at the team level. It's the same shit with some shit thrown on top to make the managers feel more in control. So I think, but I think to disagree slightly with your statement, Caitlin, around who's most important, depending on your product type, Scaled Agile framework, the buyer is most important because they hold the cards, they control what is the organization going to do. So if the managers decide we're doing safe because I was convinced we're doing safe, be damned what the user says. The manager is the buyer, and they're going to force it.
Yeah, but it won't last long. I mean, I agree with you. I agree with you. I guess if you're
We're still doing safe.
Yep. Or sadly, we're still doing
It's on
safe.
5.1 now, right? So it's
God.
still lasting.
So do you guys feel, as Scrum Masters, Agilists, or if we feel or we notice that there's a difference in voice, where, we're looking at the stakeholders, the customers, the users, and we're hearing that, maybe one voice is louder. Do you think it's our job to kind of help our audiences look for a win-win-win or win, or depending on how many voices there are? Like, should we be the ones who kind of encourage and kind of try to level out those voices?
Yeah, if we're building it, we're responsible for what we put in the world. So
Exactly.
I think so too.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I mean, it could be as simple as each one of those are different personas. The people paying for it, the people that are using it. Sometimes there's going to be a difference, and there could be something that everyone can agree on, but it's going to be very difficult to find that in a lot of those instances, I feel like.
Yeah, in this episode, I brought up the whole, I guess we're going to go back to phones for a brief moment, but I tread lightly. I brought up the Verizon store metaphor, right? Like, you got people coming into Verizon stores who are playing with all the phones. They're users of the phones because they're playing with them, but they're the customer of the phone that they buy. They're not the customer for all the phones. But to your point, John, how often do we have business stakeholders in sprint demos and they don't even know how to use the software? Why are they in the sprint demo giving insight and commentary for their people, but they don't even know how to use it? Why aren't the power users in that sprint demo? So yeah, we as Agilists should be speaking up to that if the product owner isn't.
I'll even take that a step further and refer back to something me and Josh were talking about earlier, our days over at UNCC and learning design. And I believe I had one professor, and I'm not going to say their name, that told me that customers don't know what the hell they want.
That's true.
You have to figure it out, because oftentimes a client, if you're a designer, will tell you, I want this, and you deliver exactly what they asked for, and they're like, that's not what I asked for. They're like, no, that is exactly what you fucking asked for. So what did you really want? Well, I don't know. I'll know it when I see it.
That's where requirement gathering becomes a highly specialized skill.
Ugh. Oh God, those two words. Anyway, let's transition to the next topic. So, from episode 7, the customer, UX edition. Products serve the customer it's designed for, but there is no guarantee that they'll use it without the right design. Do you agree or disagree, MC? And why?
I think I will disagree because I think there's a lot of products out there. We've touched on it several times here. I think there's a lot of products out there that are, or even processes that are just designed very poorly, but it's either ingrained in us or we're brand loyal to a fault, right? So, I think one of the most inefficient industries in the world is the movie industry. And I think the pandemic has exposed that. So, but there's a large number of people that going to the box office and picking their time slot and getting their popcorn, they hold that in such high regard that they'll continue to go to that industry, despite the fact, for me, right, family of 4, it's way cheaper to buy that $40 Disney Plus pass to watch, the new movie. Because if I take my family to the theaters, we're dropping $55 plus easy, right? And that's before the popcorn. So I think it's just one of those situations where I think it's largely going to depend on the industry or the specific product. But I think more often than not, it doesn't matter if the design is right or not. I think it's convenience and brand loyalty will outweigh at times.
I disagree a little bit.
Oh boy.
Weren't you just talking about the Mac Mini and how
Yeah,
it
he
didn't
was.
work
He's
and
about to
shit?
come in strong.
No. I disagree from the standpoint of, while it may be cheaper, they offer something that's unique. I've tried to replicate it here in my house. I got an 80-inch TV. I finished my basement. I made a movie room. And guess what? After doing all of that efforts, I still rather go to the movie theater.
You know, I love the movie theater.
And you can't, like, there's some experiences you can't replicate unless you have an infinite amount of money. Like, right? Like, there's something about being 20 rows up, because, like, when I go, there's a specific row I like to sit in.
Yep.
So there is part of the row in which I sit, like, I like to sit 8 seats in, about 7 to 8 rows up, because, and then, like, I can't replicate like a 80. I don't even know what an IMAX screen is. Like there's not a TV big enough or space big enough in your house unless you're like have like a mega mansion, you know, or you got Bill Gates kind of money where you can replicate that theater experience. So I feel like there's still a place for that, for the people that, and maybe you are ingrained in it. Maybe I went so much that nothing could satisfy that itch that I do in my house. But I tried to replicate it, and I can't replicate it. So I want to go to Cinemark and watch my movie.
Oh boy.
I have 2 things. One, you said that you won't be satisfied, and I immediately jumped to Hamilton.
Oh God.
You'll never be satisfied.
Here we go.
2, Manny, all I hear from your story here is just poor requirements.
Oh God.
Covering. You built something, and it doesn't satisfy the need that you spent. Like you
I had a budget. I don't have Bill Gates money. I just said that. So my requirements gathering was accurate, but I had to de-scope it based on the budget.
So you built a skateboard instead of.
Oh God, let's not go there now. Okay, if we're gonna keep it about movies, what I will say though, like brand loyalty definitely kicks in, right? Think about like, okay, so Regal versus Cinemark versus AMC. They all serve the same purpose. They all serve, but the design and the experience is the kicker. Okay, because I am a AMC A-lister, listeners. Okay, so I am a loyal customer to AMC, and when I go to the movies, I go to the AMC Prime Time. I guess it's called Dolby Cinema now, but when they first came out, it was called Prime Time. And Prime Time is a specific screen. It's not really as large as IMAX, but 120 speakers in the room, in the auditorium. There's speakers in the seat. There's speakers in the ceiling. There's speakers in the walls. Like when you watch like War on the Planet of the Apes, that scream goes right through you. So when I talk about design, I'm not going to get that same design from Regal or other places to try to compete with that. So with design being a competitive factor, it does bring my loyalty to AMC unless the next movie theater that comes out can top that.
Yeah, or Manny's basement only have 6 speakers.
Well, if it's in the seat, you got me.
No, I'm just saying, like, so like that was just a prime example of what I was like basically speaking on. Like, you know, my basement is only so big, like I can't fit 120 some odd speakers there unless I move and get a mega mansion. Like
Yeah.
right? So, you know, I don't need a bigger house. I just like that experience. So I'll spend an extra couple dollars to go to the movies because it's cheaper to go to the movies than to buy that mega house and maintain it. Like, right?
Okay, so last question for Manny
Oh, God.
on the movie topic before we move on. Do you sneak your own snacks in?
Since
Hesitated.
since my real name is not on here, yes.
There you go.
Yes, I definitely sneak my own snacks in.
Now I'm a loyal to a fault. I'm gonna get that popcorn fresh and hot.
But I buy the beer from there.
Okay.
Well, to
too
quote
expensive.
one of MC's friends, F the police.
Yes. Oh my God. Okay. So
I will share that story with the rest of you afterwards.
So with this episode, I kind of brought up, I guess, the dark, compelling story of where design really, really kicks in. Like when you, like from a disability perspective, your life gets dramatically changed when you are no longer, let's say, mobile, and you heavily rely on those designs that are in place for you to continue living a happy life. And sometimes not everything is designed for all the customers for it's intended to be used for. There is always that target customer in mind. But to not put a damper on this party here, let's transition to our final topic. So this is for anybody. No call outs here. So last topic, disruptors. From episode 8, Agile interviews. Culture fit translates to culture click. Agree or disagree? Go.
Hard agree. Yeah, it's if you're thinking about things in terms of culture fit, you're talking about how someone can fit in with you, not how they can lift you up. And so it's also just like a big excuse to let your biases run wild. And you really lose out on a lot of different perspectives if you're like, does this person fit in here with like, us playing like Smash Bros every day? And obviously I'm a Kirby guy through and through. Fight me on it.
I'll fight you. I'm good.
But
with
anyway, all right. Okay.
No, I completely agree. It's so often that hiring managers look for their own people that they've gathered, and they want like that fellow monk to join all of us and shave their heads and put on their robes and like talk like we do. And really, like, is it about culture clicks or culture contribution?
It's starting to sound like it's about cult. And I'm here for it.
Matt, you're about to say something.
I don't know. I'm kind of in the middle because I think so. Let's put it this way. Let's do a hypothetical. If I have a really good culture where everybody gets along, everything's great, and then I hire someone, and in interviews you often don't catch this crap. I hired one of the most toxic human beings on the planet. Like, just because, like, so do I hire them based on their skills, or am I hiring them based to fit in the culture? Because what if you bring somebody in that like wrecks the culture, that makes everybody miserable? Because I have worked at organizations where they would bring one person in, and all of a sudden everybody wants to just like open a vein and just get the fuck out of there. So that's why I'm kind of in the middle. Like, yes, there needs to be diversity. There needs to be diversity of perspectives and opinions and people. But the culture, especially with these large organizations that we have, the culture is often it's based on the structure. So the culture is dictated by those people. So if, I don't know, I could kind of go either way, because if you have good leaders that are interested in making an environment where people can be productive and happy and deliver for the customer, I'd kind of want to work in that culture. And if I'm working with managers that are just awful, as many of us have worked with, then they're gonna make the culture awful. So do you want to keep hiring more awful people? Maybe not. Maybe you want to hire some positive people, and then you'll end up beating them down, and you got someone jaded going back into the workforce. I'm gonna wave my hand. I've been one of them. So that's why I'm like, I could go either way. I think it's like most things. It depends.
Yeah, it's a balance, right?
I think it has to do with having a healthy difference. When we're talking about, we don't want to put poison in a group. We want to put someone that can maybe spice it up a little bit. Maybe put some salt, maybe put some pepper. Maybe some Cajun.
You got me hungry,
Who knows?
Caitlin.
But something that's a little bit different. I am just a little bit. But just put a little bit of difference in there, but nothing to spoil it, And I think that is up to the hiring person to determine. Is saying, okay, I'm bringing in this person. They're great at what they do, but man, their attitude is just toxic. They're not a fit. But you have this other person who's just like the others. They know what they do. Okay, yeah, that may be an option. But then you have this other person that's more of a positive, that has a little bit of a different taste to things, but also have the same criteria. That would be the person to kind of mix things up, give new ideas, give new innovation, and so on and so forth. You're right, Matt, when it comes to the actual management, because it doesn't matter who you put in there. If you beat them down long enough, at one point they're just gonna, I don't know what the word is, but
Become submissive.
Be submissive, yeah, and just go back in line, or become that toxic person and make it worse for someone. So you have a good point there. I guess when it comes to culture fit versus culture click, it might be good, but the culture fit is more of a positive and a healthier fit.
So is that person toxic because there's a lack of professionalism, or is that person toxic just because they're just not a good human being?
I'd go with that latter, because I've met plenty of professional people that are just terrible human beings.
And I think that right there is the gap in interviewing. How do you weed that out? Because, like, at the end of the day, in order to build culture, you need to have people that, A, are empathetic, B, understand, like, hey, I'm here to be a part of something bigger than myself. And that's part of just being a human being, because being selfless and understanding that it's not just about you. Because that's really what I observe. Like, when I see toxic people, most of the time, it's I, me, I need, versus being subservient. Like, how can I give back? What can I do for you? And, like, they don't realize, like, by doing that, you'll actually get more in return than trying to ascertain something specifically for just you. Just my observation through my experience.
So everything that I'm hearing from you guys, I think boils down to complementary, right? Caitlin, I think exactly what you described was complementary personalities. And I think that's what what we should be looking for, right? We can't, right? I can't remember what movie it was, but it was an animated movie, and they were talking about how everything in the world is starting to become the same, right? And over time throughout the movie, all the homes and the people and the cars turned into gray blobs, and everything was the same. And when you start hiring for culture fits, that's what happens. Everybody winds up being the same. Whereas if you go the inverse, what I'm describing is you go after the complementary fits, right? They don't have to be the same exact person, but you know what? I'm interviewing Caitlin, and I know her personality is going to jive well with Manny, and Manny's group needs a person. So I think Caitlin, who might have lesser skills than Matt, but I'm going to hire Caitlin to put with Manny because I know that Caitlin and Manny, those two personalities will jive. So I think what some organizations do, and they wind up failing, is they go after the culture fit, right? Everyone's got to like Super Smash Brothers, and everyone's got to wear flip-flops to work, and blah, 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 right? You have that frat bro, yeah, you have that frat bro type of culture. It breeds, a lot of toxic personalities because it's the same thing, just festering. But if you come in and say, you know what, Caitlin might be drastically different from Manny, but I think that's exactly what that group needs. So I'm going to hire the person with lesser skill that has a better complementary personality, not culture fit, because of this specific need over here. And I think for me, when I'm interviewing people and considering hiring folks, that's what I'm more so looking for. I think most people can learn anything when given the right situation. So I need to know, are these people going to be able to work together? And that's kind of what I'm looking for, at least.
It's the soft skills over the hard skills.
And honestly, as long as what I've noticed with a lot of toxic folks is as long as they have a growth versus fixed mindset, you can actually turn the corner with them. Because sometimes they don't know that they're toxic. But it's when you find those that have that fixed mindset. I found success because I've done it this way. You will do it this way because I found success doing it this way. So you got to do it this. You know what I mean? And just this perpetual circle because it's fixed. And they think that that's the only way to get up the ladder. So I think it's really about just finding someone that understands and wants to be in that growth mindset space, because then you can kind of turn them from toxic to, what the team needs. So maybe it's, instead of culture fit, how do you measure that growth versus fixed mindset?
Yeah, and both you, Manny, and MC hit really, really big points, having a personality that is complementary to others, but also carrying a growth mindset, obviously. Something that I reflect on with that specific episode, we were fangirling hard over Brian Collins. We were talking about him a lot. And Brian Collins talks about how he ended up hiring, he actually actively does this. He ends up hiring a group of misfits, not people that share the same personality, but they complement each other, and they bring so much to the table. They bring so much to the table that is beyond his skill set, and that is what he looks for. He also brings up that when he hires people for who they will become. He sees this optimistic future, and he knows what direction this person is going to go. He has a really, really deep intuition about them. And instead of seeing, hiring people for who they are now, they may fit the culture now. Is culture fit a guarantee for long term? Culture changes, I think.
We're keep talking about interviews and stuff and personality and are they a fit for a culture, but do you legitimately have a good read on somebody after an hour to 2 hours worth of talking to them about and asking them a set of questions?
You do.
I
would say you do if you pay attention to a lot of their body language and how
More
they
body language
think,
than what they say. Yep.
and that kind of just how they react to not really what they say, because anyone can lie. Anyone can lie. It's their body language, if they're tapping or if they're fidgeting or anything along those lines, or just any certain tick that they may have. That could be something that, okay, something may not be right. Maybe they're not as confident. Maybe
they're having a bad day is where I'm going, because I have had people that worked underneath me that were going up for promotions that were already doing the job, were great individuals. They fit well with the culture. Everyone loved them. They were going above and beyond. Then they get into the interview, and for whatever reason, they had a bad day, and their interview was just terrible. I've literally had to turn down someone that was already doing the job because their interview was so bad that HR was like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm like, but they're already doing the job. People have bad days. And if you talk about fidgeting and stuff like that, I've literally broken this plastic
Oh my God,
piece
I
into
fidget
like 3
like crazy.
pieces since we've been
My
sitting
God.
there. Yeah, I fidget all the time. So
I
Can
understand
we
what you're
stop
saying.
with that? I hate that. Sorry, Caitlin. I just wanted, like, that irritates me to the core. Like, you hit the nail on the head. Dude's already doing the job. She's already doing the job. Why are we even interviewing? Why are we wasting money and resources? They're doing it. Give them the title. Let them continue being great.
Right.
Because what you're saying to that person is, you're doing the job, you can execute the job, we're not going to pay you because you can't pass a test. Have we really boiled down to a test? This is ridiculous. Like, you've already proven, especially for internal candidates. I get the interviewing for external. You don't know. You want to try to do your due diligence and bring them in and make sure they're a cultural fit. But you got somebody who's been 5 years loyal in that role for 3 years, been doing the new role for 2 years, helping take a lot off your plate, Matt. And I'm arguing with HR all day, hands up and down. They're doing the job. No, we're not losing this employee. Give them the title. I'm just saying. Pay the man. Pay the man. Pay the woman.
I want you on my side, man.
We the people.
we didn't lose her. We didn't lose her. In fact, like I told her, she obviously did not do the job that she was doing, that she wasn't supposed to be doing anyway, but was doing so because there was a void that needed to be filled for that position. So she was already doing the work. She ended up getting the job less than a month or two later because we had another position open, and she had a better day. But also, when you do these interviews, you have to do these interviews from an HR perspective. You have to cover your ass before somebody takes your ass to court and says you're showing favoritism.
I get that. That's the society. I know. I'm a manager. I know. I'm speaking from an ideal world. Like, in my mind, it's like they're already doing it. It's not that you're giving them this. They've earned it. Like, right? Like, where in society can we fit that in? Like, you know what I mean? Because it's not like I just pegged you, Matt, and say, hey, I think you could do this job. No. This person is already doing it. So it's not that they deserved it. It's not that I pegged them. It's not that there's any bias. They're already doing it. They've earned it.
Yeah, they've already done the interview.
That should be a formality, and that's it. But I guess, Matt, on your side, to your point, I feel like an interviewer should be able to see the difference between someone having a bad day and someone being toxic. Because if you're having a bad day and if you're stumbling or like you're fidgeting and you're like, you look nervous, or you look anxious, that's not toxic. That's not that. But if you're having a bad day and you end up saying, like, I don't know, inappropriate things, or if you end up just yelling or just
unprofessionalism,
there's certain cues. Like, professionalism, there's certain cues that like, okay, well, there might be something else going on with this person other than them having a bad day or they're nervous or so on and so forth. MC, you're going to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think kind of what, Matt, you're describing, I don't think it's a problem with that. I think the problem is, at that point, the problem is falling to the interviewer. And what's the structure of the interview? Because you can structure an interview very, very, very specifically to find out, okay, is this person lying, right? I was talking with somebody, I can't remember what it was, but we were talking through, right, my worst interview. Tabby, we talked about it in the last episode. He asked me the same question like 6 times. I felt sick to my stomach because I knew the fucking answer. And then, I was trying to find out, are you bullshitting your way through this interview? Because especially in the Agile space, you can listen to a handful of podcasts and read a couple books, and all of a sudden you're an Agile expert because you can say all the right shit. And for someone doing the interview that doesn't have good intuition or that hasn't structured the interview in such a fashion, you can't suss that out. So I put the blame on the situation you're describing, Matt, more so on the company than the person who just failed at the interview, because I've interviewed people where I'm just like, this person sucks at interviews, but the content of what they delivered in the interview shined through. And when I'd had my little success sliders that we did for the interview, that person was up higher, and everyone else in the interview was like, I don't know, man. I was like, no, this person has the it factor. They just sucked in the group interview, and that's okay. Those are skills that are easily teachable, but they have the other things. They have the growth mindset. They have the ability to work with others, and that's the person that I pounded on the table for. And for everyone in here, well, for Manny, Tabby, and John, we hired that person, they're on our team, and everyone loves that person. I'm not going to say who it is, but everyone is like, this person's a phenomenal addition to the team.
Now I'm going to wonder who that person is. But anyway, I digress. So sadly, Disruptors, we got to wrap up. We went through all of our lovely, lovely topics from season 1, and I'm not going to cry, but inside I'm really crying because this is the season finale. So I want to thank each and every one of you. I know Josh had a skedaddle for a little moment, but as I'm thanking you, I would like you all to think about your favorite line from season 1. So I'll share mine. So my favorite line from season 1 was episode 7 from the customer haha UX. And this shit Manny says, not Manny, I'm sorry, MC. MC is harping on the back button on Microsoft Word. Back going left means I forgot the direct line, but I think MC remembers. Just that part where he harps on the back button. I just die every time I listen to that episode. But I want to thank you, Matt, for kickstarting our pilot season in the first 2 episodes.
Thank you. And I don't know if I really have the most memorable, any quote at all that's memorable to me is every single time MC was like, you.
I like you.
You're good, you.
Oh, yeah. It's great. Analyze this and analyze that for anyone who doesn't know where that's from.
There you go.
Phenomenal. I think for me, though, there's so many great moments that we had over the season. Lots of laughter. But I honestly, I really enjoyed watching the passion just a few minutes ago on Manny's face when he was walking through they're doing the job now. Just
for the
give
people.
Them the shit. But I think that for me I think is really important because there's so many industries where they have to go through these hooplas. I know for me personally it hit this off season that my favorite team in the NFL, the Jaguars, they picked their man last year. They knew who they were going to hire, but they had to go through the same song and dance. And the NFL has a rule that you must interview a minority for a head coaching position. And it speaks to the fact of how in a negative place in society that we're in, where we're saying we have to interview a minority, where it's just interview the people that are qualified and you wouldn't be in this position. Because of all the people that they could have hired, he definitely deserved it, but they got criticized and all this other stuff. So I like the passion that Manny that you brought to the table there.
Can we kill that word deserve? I hate that word.
Earned.
Right? Earned. Earned. You're doing the job.
God.
You've earned it. Deserve means that you have a sense of entitlement and you have potential. You might be able to do it, but you waited long enough, so you might deserve the opportunity. No. People earn their way. Let that show. Let people get the opportunity based on what they've earned, their merit. I'm sorry. I'm passionate about that. And that's part of my brand.
Love it.
I'm people first.
Yeah. Well, speaking of people first, Manny, thank you for bringing your passion into this podcast. What has been your favorite moment?
I definitely love hearing all about the pizza.
Oh my God. Yes, absolutely. And I mean, it's going to continue on outside this podcast. So, thank you, Caitlin, for bringing all your bubbliness. And honestly, you are the second female in this podcast. I know it's been pretty male dominant, but I got to harp for the women in this podcast too.
Yeah, represent. You know what I mean? Yeah, man. So I was thinking an actual quote, but there was one on episode 6, and it's not really a funny one, but it kind of gave me more an epiphany, and I was like, wow, that was really good. It was, I don't know who said it, but it was about the projected hurricane.
Oh yeah, that was Matt.
I love that, Matt. I love that. And I was just it was such a great analogy when it came to delivery and everything along those lines. I was and I was in my head, I was how am I going to map? I'm going to map exactly a hurricane. I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it. And so I love that. Absolutely. And Manny, your passion just gave me goosebumps. So I absolutely love that as well.
And can I just say that season 2 is probably going to be women dominated because you've probably used and utilized all the men that's in the Agile space because it's dominated by women because you guys are phenomenal multitaskers.
Represent, Manny.
We just bring passion and fire, and Tabby will tell you all the time how I hit her up hey, I need that excellent board you put together because you're better at multitasking than I am.
Nah, bro.
So we appreciate the love in season 1, but you guys got it. Y'all killing our space.
Oh, well, thank you, Manny. And last but not least, John, thank you for bringing your inquisitiveness. And like, John, as a person, I just love your quirkiness. Like, your insight has like the perfect timing every time, whether it's sarcasm or insight. So what has been your favorite moment?
Well, thank you, Tabby. So I was just thinking, like, I actually didn't have a chance to sit in with Jake, but I remember at one point he was talking about like how deep he goes into like product thinking, and he mentioned something about like a chair at one point. He's like I don't just think about the chair, I think about the reason why the person sits in the chair is because he has to put a friend in the chair. You know, like he goes all the way in. You know, so I thought that was pretty profound. So hopefully season 2 I'll get to sit with him and kind of pick his brain.
Yeah, definitely. We got to give kudos to Jake too. Sadly, he couldn't join us, but like he brought a lot of deep philosophical sides of product and the product mindset. So big kudos to Jake, and he will listen to it in our season finale. So what I will say, I think I remember the line. Oh, so this is what MC said: arrow going left means back. Like, that is verbatim what he said, and I just die laughing every time he says it. So I had to get that out of there, MC. So
I mean, it's true.
But you're
like, why do you have a back arrow that's
okay,
actually
it's your
a menu?
conviction.
Like,
it really isn't that big of a deal, but your conviction that comes out in your voice when you say that is just hysterical. I'm calling you out.
You shouldn't build a product that is designed to confuse people. Like,
Okay.
what? That's like putting a fingerprint scanner on a phone and it's like, haha, it doesn't work. Like, it's actually a power button. Like, what the fuck? Don't do that. Come on,
Okay, I
Microsoft.
digress before we keep going into that rabbit hole. So for all you listeners out there, again, thank you for making the pilot season of Agile Disrupted an epic hit. Stay tuned for season 2 trailers coming soon this summer, Agile Disrupted.